Max Verstappen. Now I think we can all agree he's pretty good at what he does. He's pretty fast as a racing driver. Some would say he's the best. Lewis Hamilton might contest that, given that he's won 7 world championships. But with both Mercedes seats up for grabs in 2022, Verstappen's boss, Christian Horner, believes that Max Verstappen should be top of the Daimler board's list to replace Lewis Hamilton this season, should the world champion retire at the end of the 2021 season. Today I ask, would Max joining Mercedes be good for Formula One? My name's Aaron, and it's time for the 5 red lights.
1 light, 2 lights, 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights, and it's go, 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 go!
Before I discuss whether Max joining the Silver Arrows would be good for Formula One, please take a moment to like, subscribe, follow or rate this episode, however you're consuming it, whether you're watching on YouTube, whether you're listening on Spreaker or another podcast platform. It would be hugely appreciated. It would help me grow the channel further. Thank you in advance for anyone who chooses to do that. Let's dive on in and discuss whether Max joining Mercedes would be good for F1. So what's the news? We all know that Max has a contract, and we all know that drivers move to the best teams, and that's just how Formula One works. But what's so significant about it right now? Well, let's look back to last year when Red Bull boss Christian Horner declared that his Red Bull Racing #1, Max Verstappen, was the best driver on the grid. Here's what he said. Max and Lewis stand out for me, but while we absolutely should not be blind to all that Hamilton has achieved, he does have more access to a good package, while Max has to get more and more out of his car. You can see that by the fact that a driver from Williams has qualified directly on the front row of the grid and almost won the race. And he was talking back at the Sakhir Grand Prix. This is just after that race, probably pre-Abu Dhabi. If someone had to get into Max's car if he had coronavirus, they would never reach his level of performance. Now, I think we can argue that this is all simply down to Mercedes designing a better car than Red Bull. So the fact that the car is fast with any driver is because it's easy to drive, it's easy to set up, it's easy to get a handle on. Conversely, the Red Bull early stages of 2020, it had a really nervous rear end, and obviously we always saw they were facing the wrong way, they were swapping ends. It was both Verstappen and Albon having that issue. Now also consider George Russell. He's a tall guy, you know, he's not small. He didn't fit that car properly, and I think even with Verstappen in the race, he would still have been on course to win it. You know, puncture notwithstanding and pit stop blunders, he would still have been at the front because that is how good George Russell is. So that shouldn't detract from what George did. If anything, that should be a more glowing representation. Now, it's not unlike Christian Horner to do this and try and almost belittle other people's achievements, I feel, because, well, Helmut Marko does it, doesn't he? You know, if it's not Red Bull, we don't care. It's, you know, it's not good enough. And how he treats the Red Bull stable drivers sometimes is borderline despicable, in my opinion. I really don't have much time for what Helmut Marko has to say. Sometimes it is utter tripe. And I think Christian Horner has become a puppet, really, to Helmut Marko. I recently read Mark Webber's autobiography, Aussie Grit. A good read. Recommend it to anyone because it does put into perspective a lot of what happens at Red Bull now with Max Verstappen, because it happened with Sebastian Vettel back in the early 2010s when he was teammate to Mark Webber, and it's fairly well documented in his book, so go and check that out for a little bit more information on that. Now, of course, there is more to it than just Christian Horner is bleating about Max being the best driver on the grid. He also revealed that, obviously, like many drivers, Verstappen does have performance clauses in his contract, and this came back to bite Red Bull somewhat when Vettel decided to activate his release clause in 2014 and moved to Ferrari, which then started the whole spiral of them putting Kvyat in the car and then Verstappen arriving and Toro Rosso doing a decent job, and then they decided, oh no, we don't like Kvyat anymore, go away, Verstappen's our man. And obviously it is hopeful that Verstappen won't be able to activate any of these clauses, because if Red Bull deliver a competitive car, they will essentially safeguard themselves against Max leaving the team. And the future's kind of looking bright for Red Bull, because they've got a good driver lineup in Verstappen and Perez, and also critically they've taken on board the power unit of Honda within their own branding as well. So it's now in-house, and that is going to be more fruitful for them in the future. So Christian had this to say on Max's contract. Look, all drivers have safeguards within performance, and the reality is that, as there always has been, there is an element of performance related to Max's contract. Now obviously this might not just be from the team side to Max, it might be the other way around. So if Max isn't performing, they could say, you know what, we decided we don't want you anymore, so go and find yourself another drive. What's Max had to say about it? Not that much. He tends to keep himself to himself, keeping on with the job at the moment. He's put aside thoughts of claiming the throne directly from Hamilton in terms of literally taking his seat at Mercedes for 2022, because he wants to concentrate on 2021, which is sensible and probably the right thing to do. If you get yourself carried away with, oh, I'm going to move to Mercedes, this, it might actually detract from your 2021 performances. Now on Max's contract, last night I watched a video on the GP debate show about the reasons why Max could trigger his exit from Red Bull, so I'll leave a link up here. Not sure which side it'll be actually. Click the I, which will be somewhere around now. Go and check that video out. So let's imagine that Max were to activate one of these clauses. What are his options away from Red Bull? Obviously, if Lewis Hamilton was to stay, Verstappen would be boxed in possibly to staying with Red Bull. There's not really a vacancy at Ferrari. Their competitiveness is dependent on their power unit improvements for this season, and McLaren don't have room for him, given they've just signed Daniel Ricciardo. Aston Martin could be a potential suitor, but I find it unlikely that they would want to partner Vettel and Verstappen in the same team, which would be absolutely fascinating and, you know, potentially very combustious, but also incredibly unlikely. Also unlikely is Mercedes partnering Lewis and Max should they decide to thank Bottas for his services and send him on his way. So ultimately I think he's kind of stuck. He's kind of waiting for Hamilton to make the move. Hamilton holds the keys here, and I think ultimately Verstappen will find himself staying with the team that fast-tracked his F1 career and provided all the machinery for his 10 Grand Prix victories. But let's look at Mercedes. What options did they have on the table? Imagine that Hamilton says he's had enough after 8 World Championships and he doesn't want to go through it all again. Verstappen's certainly going to be on their radar for a seat. But remember, they chose George Russell for the Sakhir Grand Prix when Hamilton was unavailable. Maybe that was just convenience and they wanted him, but they had Stoffel Vandoorne flying in to be the reserve driver, so they could just as easily put him in the car. I mean, that would have been interesting if Vandoorne had popped up and stuck it on the front row and gone on to almost win the race. That would have given them a real headache. But George proved he can cut it at the front in that race. How he'd fare in a title battle, we'll obviously have to wait and see, because he's simply not been in that situation yet. But aside from George and potentially Vandoorne and Nick de Vries from the Formula E Mercedes team, who else could be on the list to take a Mercedes Formula 1 seat? Charles Leclerc would also have to be on there, but Ferrari have him tied up until 2024. New Ferrari recruit Carlos Sainz perhaps, but he could take some getting out of Ferrari, and depends how well he performs there. Other names I've got down are Lando Norris, Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon, remember he was Mercedes Junior before he joined Renault, but again, how he fares against Fernando Alonso will be very important. Kimi Raikkonen might even still be hanging around and out of a drive, so why not put Kimi in the Mercedes? Stranger things have happened. Does F1 need Red Bull to keep Verstappen? Many people are growing tired of Mercedes seemingly endlessly winning, and it must also be marvelled and cherished as we witness a team achieving extraordinary things. Yeah, Ferrari swept all before them in the early 2000s with the Todt, Brawn, Schumacher triangle at the helm, but that was also marred with controversy and a perceived lack of competition from Rubens Barrichello, whether it was in his contract or not. You know, Austria 2002 kind of signified all of that, in a nutshell. And rule changes seem to benefit them more often than not. Mercedes have had to face the same barrage of rule tweaks and alterations, the complete radical change from 16 to 17 and the more subtle one from 18 to 19 with the front wings. And yet, ultimately, they've done the better job on all fronts. So, while F1 has benefited from a renaissance of Ferrari in 2017 and 2018, and Red Bull have come on strong as the years have progressed before not continuing that momentum at the start of the next season, Mercedes are just simply doing a better job. F1 needs competition, but really I feel it shouldn't be manufactured, so Red Bull and Ferrari must do better jobs. But you must also look at the emerging teams from the midfield. McLaren are coming strong again, and Aston Martin, what was Racing Point, they're well backed now, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. Of course, we've got the rule change in 2022, so it could all just simply turn on its head, like it did in 2009. Obviously, the sport would benefit from a strong Red Bull which retains Max Verstappen's skills behind the wheel, going head-to-head with Mercedes. So on that basis, you could easily claim that Verstappen should just stay at Red Bull, because it would be better for the show. But Max has to do what's best for him. So overall, what do I think? Well, I think Hamilton will stay for 2022, and I think he will be partnered by George Russell. I've gone through all of the driver market for 2022 in last week's video, so go and check that out if you haven't. But as Murray Walker, the very famous Formula 1 commentator, would often say, anything can happen in Formula 1, and it usually does. So don't be surprised to see all of this go completely out the window. My main issue with Verstappen going to Mercedes is how it would affect George Russell's prospects, and he is a real talent. But also, what could it do for Red Bull in the future if they were to lose their star driver and there's no real apparent heir to him on the horizon? So would Max going to Mercedes be bad for F1? Not particularly, because it wouldn't be a disaster. There would always be someone else. The driver market moves around, and you've got Charles Leclerc at Ferrari. If Ferrari come good, you've got a brilliant prospective rivalry there with Mercedes and Ferrari, Verstappen versus Leclerc. That would be sensational. But if Ferrari is still in the wilderness, you give Verstappen the Mercedes and he's going to win the races and he's going to win the World Championships. So would it be good? Not brilliant from a spectacle perspective, but it wouldn't be terrible either, because you'd see an outstanding driver in an outstanding team delivering outstanding things. So that's my thoughts on whether Max joining Mercedes would be a good thing for Formula 1. Ultimately, time will tell. We'll have to wait and see if he goes. Let me know in the comments if you think it would be a good move for Formula 1 and if Max will actually end up at Mercedes in 2022. That's the end of the episode. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said at the start, please subscribe, like, rate, follow, however you are consuming this episode. It's going to be up on Spreaker and on YouTube. My name is Aaron. This has been the 5 Red Lights, and we've reached the checkered flag on another episode. See you in the next one, guys. Bye for now.